The cameras were rolling. The lights were soft. The set of Oprah's iconic talk show gleamed with the polished comfort of a cultural institution. But no one, not the crew, not the audience, not even Oprah herself, could have anticipated what was about to unfold. It started like any other high-profile interview. Jonathan Roumie, known to millions as Jesus from The Chosen, sat with a calm, grounded smile. He wasn't promoting a blockbuster film. He wasn't selling a book. He was there, simply, to talk about what mattered most to him: faith, truth, and the quiet strength that anchors his life. Oprah leaned forward, voice velvet and sugar. "So, Jonathan," she began, "you actually believe all this stuff, right? The miracles, the walking on water, the rising from the dead. You believe. You're not just playing a role." There it was. A smile flickered on her lips, playful, but sharp. The audience chuckled. Jonathan's posture didn't shift, but something behind his eyes did. The room didn't know it yet, but they'd crossed a line. Not into disrespect, but into revelation. There was a pause, the kind that hangs in the air like thunder waiting to roll. Jonathan leaned back, he took a breath, and with it, centuries of silent faith, misunderstood, minimized, mocked, rose with him. "I do," he said quietly, "but I think you're asking the wrong question." Oprah blinked. The air tightened. You could hear someone in the audience whisper, "Wait, what?" He continued. "The question isn't whether I believe in miracles. The question is, why does it bother us so much if someone does?" That was the spark. The audience went quiet. Oprah sat still. What began as a gentle tease now carried the weight of something ancient, something sacred. Because behind Oprah's question was the cultural undercurrent that faith in modern Hollywood is a prop, that conviction is for scripts, not for people. But Jonathan Roumie wasn't a character, and this wasn't a performance. It was real, and it was just getting started. There was a shift in the room, not loud, not sudden, but felt like a tide pulling back from shore. Before a wave, Oprah, always composed, tilted her head with that familiar half-smile. Her voice softened, but the edge remained. "Jonathan," she said, "I respect that, truly. But you do understand how it sounds, right? In today's world, science, technology, progress, do you think people are really looking for ancient answers to modern problems?" It was polite, measured, but underneath it, the implication was clear. "Isn't your faith outdated?" Jonathan didn't flinch. He didn't fire back. He looked at her the way a man looks at a storm, with fear, but with reverence. "I think," he said slowly, "that people aren't looking for answers. They're looking for meaning." There was a murmur in the audience. Not applause, not laughter, something quieter. Oprah shifted, just slightly. She wasn't used to losing ground, especially not on her own stage. But Jonathan wasn't fighting. He wasn't preaching. He was just being Dot, and that, somehow, made it all the more powerful. He looked at the crowd. You can scroll all day, watch 100 interviews, read 1,000 opinions. But at the end of it all, when you're lying awake at 2 a.m., heart racing, wondering why you feel empty even though everything's fine, what do you really want? He let the silence stretch. Hope, not hacks, not headlines. Hope. Someone in the back gasped. A young woman, maybe 23, wiped a tear. She didn't know why, but something about his words hit something buried deep. Oprah leaned back in her chair now. Not defensive, curious. "Jonathan," she said more gently, "are you saying the world has lost hope?" He turned to her. "I'm saying we've traded it. We've exchanged wonder for cynicism. We mock faith because we think it makes us stronger. But deep down, I think we're just scared." Oprah's expression cracked. Just for a moment. Something in his words rang true. Something too real to dismiss. And then Jonathan leaned in, voice low. "When I say I believe Jesus walked on water, I'm not saying it to sound holy. I'm saying it because, if God could do that, then maybe he can walk into the broken places in my life too." No applause. No cue cards. Just silence. The kind that fills a room when truth walks in. Barefoot, uninvited, and undeniable. The tension had shifted. No longer a battle of beliefs, but a moment of reckoning. And Oprah was no longer in control. The producers in the booth were whispering urgently, unsure whether to cut to commercial. But they didn't. They couldn't. Because something real was happening. Jonathan sat quietly. Not smug, not triumphant. Just still. Like he knew this moment wasn't about him. Like he was only a messenger. Oprah broke the silence. "Jonathan, I didn't expect this," she said honestly. Most people come here with sound bites. You came with silence. And somehow, it's louder. Jonathan smiled gently. It's not silence, he said. It's peace. And the world is starving for it. Oprah folded her hands. She wasn't mocking now. She was listening, really listening. But how do you hold on to that? She asked, almost as if speaking to herself. With the pressure, the pain, the weight of expectations. Doesn't it crack you, too? Jonathan looked down, nodded slowly. It does. There were nights I wanted to give up. Even during The Chosen, when everything looked perfect on the outside, I was crumbling inside. He looked up, eyes heavy. But that's when faith isn't a performance. It's not a costume. It's a lifeline. He took a breath. Sometimes I whisper a prayer, not because I'm pious, but because I'm drowning. Oprah blinked. Her throat tightened. No one had ever said it like that. You're saying faith is weakness? Jonathan chuckled softly. No, I'm saying faith is honesty. It's saying, I can't do this alone. And then, trusting you're not alone. The crowd was still. No rustling. No phones. It felt sacred. And then Oprah whispered the question that changed everything. Jonathan, do you ever doubt? His eyes glistened. All the time, he said. But doubt isn't the opposite of faith. It's the doorway to it. He leaned forward. If you've never questioned, you've probably never trusted. And when I doubt, when it gets dark, I remember this. Even when I stop holding on to him, he never stops holding on to me. There it was. A line not rehearsed, but unforgettable. Oprah didn't speak. Her eyes shimmered with something unexpected. Conviction, respect, maybe even belief. There was no applause, not yet, because the room wasn't done listening. Jonathan Roumie sat with a quiet authority, not forced, not staged, just true. And Oprah. She leaned back in her chair, eyes locked onto his, as if trying to process something too big for words. You've given me a lot to think about, she said at last, her voice lower, steadier, and maybe. You've reminded me of something I forgot. Jonathan didn't reply. He didn't have to. Oprah took a deep breath. I've interviewed presidents, kings, icons. But today, you reminded me of something I used to believe when I was a little girl. She looked at the audience now. At one point, I believed God was close. That he listened, that he cared. There was a pause. A long one. I think somewhere along the way, I traded that for control, for approval, for applause. She looked back at Jonathan. And now, I wonder, if I gave up something real for something loud. Jonathan nodded gently. We all do. Until we remember. And even then, grace waits. Oprah smiled, but not her usual smile. This one was softer, more human. You didn't just answer my mockery, she said. You answered something I didn't even know I was asking. Jonathan blinked slowly. That's what truth does. It doesn't shout. It just waits to be heard. The audience was silent, but you could feel the change, the shift, the stirring. And then, quietly, applause began. Not explosive, but reverent. As if everyone knew they had just witnessed something sacred. Later, backstage, Oprah stood by the curtains, her eyes misty. She turned to Jonathan as he walked past. Without cameras, without pressure, she extended her hand. This time he hesitated. Then he took it, not with pride, but with forgiveness. Their hands met, and something passed between them. Not just civility, not just respect, but restoration. Oprah squeezed his hand, her voice almost trembling. Thank you for not walking off. Thank you for staying. Jonathan smiled. That's what love does. It stays. And with that, he walked away. No spotlight, no final word. Just a man who stood when it was easier to fold. And somehow, that changed everything. The clip would go viral. The headlines would twist it. The pundits would argue about it. But for those who truly watched, they'd remember that sometimes, when faith is mocked, it answers not with anger, but with presence. And presence is what leaves the world speechless.